I'll just start by giving a quick overview since we haven't been together for a couple months. We haven't held this community meeting for a couple months, just to give an overview of a couple of things that have been going on, and then we'll get into some of the kind of community engagement stuff, and that's where Sev talk about some of the work that he's been doing. If you've been following Regen Network, you'll know that Regen Ledger 5.0 was released, which is a pretty big deal for us. It's what we call the groups functionality. It gives people kind of DAO-like capabilities, so you can basically create something similar to a DAO, or I guess it could even be a DAO using the groups module. So some of that work is going to continue to develop, but at least the underlying functionality is there. Something else that was announced during the Regenerati News Hour, that's a Twitter space that Regen Network has every Thursday. I think it's 11 o'clock Eastern time. Austin Wade Smith announced that he's the new executive director of the Regen Foundation. So that's big news for us, because the Regen Foundation is associated with us, but it's the nonprofit kind of arm of Regen Network. As far as ReFi Network, I know Sage was trying to get in. She didn't have the Eventbrite invitation, but she may just be having trouble. But some news with ReFi. ReFi Network is in the Gitcoin round that's going on now. It's an alpha round. And I'll put the link in the chat in case anybody's interested. The alpha round for Gitcoin it's really that Gitcoin is trying a new platform, and the alpha round is just basically to test it. But it's a real round. There's significant matching going on. I think they've got a total of $1 million. It's divided into 3 parts. The climate part is just a third of that. But that's significant money for matching. So if you have an opportunity to donate, most people just donate $1, and that can be matched by tens or even hundreds of dollars. So even donating just a little bit makes a difference. We started working we basically hired somebody part-time to do some communications outreach for ReFi Network, and that person's going to be hopefully getting making some contacts and participating in some community discussions and things like that, because both Sage and I are pretty busy. I am pretty much pausing my DeSci activities at Regen right now, because it's really all hands on deck just trying to get credits on chain. So I'm not doing much in the ReFi or DeSci world right now. I'm trying to help out as much as I'm able. A lot of that is in the evenings and weekends and things like that. But a lot of my work, and most of the people in registry and science right now are really focused just in getting credits on chain. It's a huge effort for us. As far as the grazing methodology that I've been working on with Fibershed, that's moving forward. I got the reviews back finally. That was delayed a couple months really, but I responded to reviewers' comments. I sent that out back to the reviewers. I'm waiting to hear their feedback. I'm hoping to have a meeting with them if they're willing to do that, because it would help I think it would help expedite the process a little bit. Overall, the reviews were encouraging. There were some issues with like the kilo sheep hour. One of the things that they pointed out that I had not thought of was the importance of different sheep breeds and ages. I just was counting sheep as sheep. And so we need to figure out how to incorporate that into the methodology. And it could be done either using different classes or categories of sheep, or just having some sort of correction factor. So different sheep breeds and ages have, I forget what it's called now. Ed, you might know, but it's a number that basically says how much sheep eat. It's a monthly estimate of how much they eat. But anyway, that's all moving forward, which is exciting for me. One of the other issues that came up actually was how many times they can graze in a 5-month period. Initially, I said one grazing event in that 5-month period, because that's part of this kind of intensive grazing with a long rest between grazing events. Some of the reviewers seem to think that you could get more than that and still get, getting more grazing events would actually increase benefits rather than decrease benefits. So that's something I need to talk to them about and get some feedback. So I'm waiting for that. It's not, I don't have any expertise in sheep grazing, so I'm really really waiting for them to weigh in on some of that. So hopefully we can get a dialogue going in the next week or two. Yeah, go Sev.
I'm just curious, those reviewers, what is the, like for that methodology that you're coming up with? I'm just curious, like, how did you find these reviewers, and I guess what is the expertise that they're coming in with? For are they folks who are deeply familiar with sheep grazing? Is that the criteria, or or what was the expertise?
So the expertise on the review panel is people that have sheep grazing experience and also soil scientists that have been working in grazing environments. So, you know, testing soil based on grazing and seeing how soil changes based on different grazing patterns and things like that. So that's the expertise. And I should mention that since this methodology was developed in-house, we wanted to have it handled by somebody outside of Regen Network. So we identified somebody, and they handled the first part of the review, but then they got a job, and their employer said that this would be a conflict of interest, that they had to stop working with us. So that's why I've just now taken over. So this person handled everything up to now. She basically sent the reviewer comments to me. I responded to the reviewer comments, but now I'm corresponding directly with reviewers. And it's not ideal, but this is a little bit different than a standard kind of academic peer review, where, you know, anonymity is top. With this, what we're trying to do is offer anonymity, but the idea is that the reviewers should be supporting the methodology. So they should be, you know, trying to provide critical comment, you know, give critical feedback, but be willing to work with people developing the methodology to make it better. So that's what I'm hoping is going to happen through this process. And I'll admit, this is all still pretty experimental for me. It's a little different from what I'm used to in kind of an academic environment. But this isn't an academic environment, so I guess I'm starting with what I'm familiar with, and now trying to adjust using some common sense if I can. Oh, here we go. There's Raphael.
Maybe just to add to that, when we have been putting all these other methodologies through review, we have kind of a list of reviewers that we've assembled at Regen. So we have started to build that. So if methodology is coming through, we do have a number of folks at this point that we can reach out to get 2 or 3 reviews on each of the methodologies.
And I don't know if
anybody knows people that want to review, send them our way.
And Raphael posted to the chat, his microphone's not working yet. I'm glad that you're here, Raphael. I didn't realize that you were the Courageous Lands, Raphael. So thanks for posting that. So another initiative that I've just recently started, just really a couple of weeks ago, and I've been thinking about it for a while, but actually started working with it a couple of weeks ago, is to create a graph database of, you know, basically trying to link practices with outcomes, and trying to understand who's doing what, where they're doing it, what kinds of projects are successful, or are people getting outcomes that are you know, expected? Are they good outcomes? Are they not so good outcomes? And doing all this in a graph database so we can track it and understand some of these relationships. And in, you know, going to the peer review, this will be a great resource, I think, for peer review, because, you know, for example, the test case that I'm using right now is with agroforestry, because there are, you know, a few people working with agroforestry. It's a nice topic because it's not too constrained. There are different types of agroforestry that people practice, but it's not huge. It's not, you know, like biodiversity or something. So I've been able to contact a colleague who actually she's published one paper on it already. It's a systematic review of literature trying to link practices to outcomes, basically climate-based outcomes. And she's got a great database of a lot of work. So we're working with over 100, I forget how many, it might even be over 200 papers on just focused on agroforestry. And then we just started working with an intern, and that intern is going to be looking for other articles and also helping to kind of get this going. So the idea is to have a proof of concept that we can demonstrate maybe in a couple months from now. And it's possible that that it's not going to be as great as I had expected, and then I'll stop working on it. But if my expectation is that it's going to be a powerful tool to monitor what's going on in kind of linking practices to outcomes, and that's what from my perspective with environmental stewardship, that's what I'm really trying to do. And so hopefully it'll be a decent resource. Right now, I'm just getting the bibliographic resources from my colleague and processing them in R to get them suitable in a good format to upload to the graph database. I'm using Neo4j if anybody's interested in graph databases. As far as rabbit holes that I've been going down the last month or two, I've been trying to learn more about different economic systems, because this one of the things with environmental stewardship is that I'm trying to think of things a little bit differently than the traditional kind of ecosystem economic models or environmental economics models. And there's something called ecosystem environment. I'm sorry. The traditional methods with carbon stuff are the environmental economic models. And what I'm trying to do is use the ecological economic models. So I'm just trying to learn more about that, what the differences are and things like that. And there are lots of other economic models out there that, there's one, I guess, feminist economics, which is one that's becoming more prominent. And I'm just trying to understand what's going on. For me, it's a little bit difficult because I'm not used to kind of reading economic literature, and some of it's really hard for me to digest. It's not like science stuff, but it's something that's keeping me. It's intriguing, and I'm not sure. I haven't seen any great articles that tell you how to like transform, from one economic model to the other. But for now, it's interesting reading. So before I continue, does anybody have any questions or any questions about Regen or the work that we've been doing kind of around environmental stewardship?
I had just a couple of quick things I wanted to double click on there that you mentioned. That initiative to link practices to outcomes around agroforestry, that seems really relevant to what we're working on. And I'm just wondering, one, any ways that you need help or could use support on that, and then two, is it outcomes in a broader sense, like outcomes in respect to biodiversity, carbon, other types of outcomes outside of just carbon?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Basic and social, anything. So any outcomes, I think, would be fair game. And I'm happy to share what we're doing right now. It's early enough that it's not much to share, really. But right now, I think what the expertise that I need most right now is just working with graph databases. I have a little bit of experience with graph databases, but just the way you think about putting the graph database together is very different from like a relational data ship. So there's this, there's a big difference between relationships and relational databases. So relationship databases are graph databases. Relational databases are kind of what at least what I learned back in the day. I'm not sure what people are learning now. There are lots of other kinds of like the NoSQL databases and things like that that are pretty popular now as well.
I can't personally help you with that at all, but I do know two people that probably could. So I'll send you an email afterwards. And
yeah, please, if you think they'd be interested in this kind of thing, I would love to be working with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ed, you got your hand up.
Yeah, there's several soil health labs that focus specifically on soil health. that all the, many of the farmers use. I know Regen Ag Lab, I think they've done 100,000 samples now. So, and they've got a database. So I know Understanding Ag is working on a lot of metrics right now, because they've collected a lot of data because they've been working with thousands of farmers. So there's so much information and data and, outcomes and all that sort of stuff that we just need to tap into. They had no-till on the plains the last couple of days. They had some great attendance. They had, a lot of the leaders in the movement at it. There's just, so much stuff. I think, we got to figure out how we make a win-win situation with these people, because they're very open source. They're very willing to share, and because they're all just trying to advance the system. It's just, and they're also looking a lot at the economics. They're learning how to go to a farmer and help them transition, and doing it in a way that really speaks to the context of the farmer so that they're comfortable, because many of them are nervous about it. Their economics are a little shaky. So to do that, we've really had to spend a lot of time through experience understanding how you create that transition. And of course, then that leads to what's the economics? How do you bring in outside, like offset credits or something, to actually help them in the way that they need to be helped, which has been a lot of the problem with the carbon market. So thanks.
So I just got a message that the meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. I don't know why that is, because we're using a pro account through Regen. So I'm just going to jump right to Seb. I don't know what's going to happen here, Seb. Sorry. And if it dies, I'll get the meeting going again right away. And if I'm not sure if you'll be able to use that Eventbrite link again. Let me just put the link in the chat. And so this, if you can save this somewhere outside of Zoom, this should get you back into the room if it does get cut off.
Okay.
So anyway, Peter Wells is joining. So Seb, do you want to start? Again, I'm really sorry. Hopefully we can get this going. So if you get cut off, we can just pick it up.
No worries. Yeah, sure. So just wanted to share a bit more. Sorry, am I coming through all right?
Yep.
Okay, you just froze on me. All right, so I just wanted to share a bit more about this last few months. We we're operating from a very collaborative approach and perspective, and we identified a handful of folks that were excited to develop methodologies, held an intention to do so, and we actually hosted a collaborative sprint to basically give some organization and structure to how we get started and figure out how to take the first steps with Regen Network, and where to start, doing research. And let me, is it possible to give me sharing capabilities? Thank you. Just share my screen for a moment here. So what we did is that we organized around this 9-week sprint, and kind of reached out to a lot of the different folks who we knew were thinking about creating methodologies, sort of knew that there was a little bit of a gap here and there that they wanted to try to work on and try to solve. And it turned out that ourselves, we wanted to create one, of course. And this is where we actually landed in Colombia in end of September. We went to a few events, got to hang out with a bunch of Regen folks at Cosmoverse, and then the ReFi Barichara event. And um, that was really insightful and helped sort of guide some of the direction on how we wanted to approach thinking about a methodology. Started to learn a lot more about the sort of stewardship and practice-based perspective, and we were really excited about that. And so when we got into Colombia, it was really a process of just trying to understand what projects were there and how to start learning and how to really approach this from small scales. There's a lot of small regenerative projects there practicing agroforestry, practicing syntropic agroforestry specifically. Also, a lot of other ecosystem restoration outside of just that, but there's a nice network and community of projects in Barichara, so it was ripe for just really learning quickly. And so we started a methodology and trying to approach that from an adaptive agroforestry. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. But there's also a handful of others who are excited to get things deployed and have submitted concept notes to Regen as well. So we, by the end of that sprint, submitted a concept note. Darina, who is really focused on coffee and cacao production and an outcomes-based methodology for smallholder farmers that are doing coffee and cacao. She's really hyper-focused on that vertical and is also submitted a concept note. And then Anna Maria from Coco DAO, she is in Colombia, and she's from Colombia. She has a lot of family all throughout, and one of the big problems there is that there was actually a lot of there's this sort of weird dynamic where the violence in Colombia 20, 30 years ago actually helped protect a lot of land from development. And now, which it's super great and fortunate that the violence is not an issue anymore, but that actually opened up where there's a risk of development and deforestation in a lot of areas in Colombia because of that. And so she's really focused on that problem and looking at smallholder avoided deforestation. So what we did, oh, and the other one, which they didn't actually participate in the sprint, but another one that we've identified that if we do another sprint, we want to include them, is the folks at Recommon who are doing a commons credit. Let me check how I'm doing on time. Okay, 3 minutes until it's gonna kick me. So the commons credit being when land is held in trust, held by the community, what ecological benefits that has, and I'm not sure if this is going to be its own eco credit or credit class, or if it's sort of like an add-on to other credits, but something that I think they're starting to work on now. And yeah, excited to connect and collaborate with them. So these were some of the folks, Gmo from Sylvie and Diogo from Agroforestry, if anyone's familiar, helped contribute to the development of our approach and sort of first draft. And we essentially had 90-minute work sessions where twice a week, where we actually spent time reviewing research, first sort of compiling research on what do we want to try to look at, what are the relevant other methodologies to take a look at and understand, looking at the environmental stewardship, the document that Ned put together, the keystone species methodology by ERA. We actually had a meeting with Courageous Lands a few months back as well, to get a little insight on how that's playing out. But we are definitely excited to do a working session on this methodology once it's ready for public review. So excited for that one, and when we get to that point. And yeah, just start compiling relevant links and organizations, resources, and essentially doing these work sessions where as a group we would come together, decide what we wanted to review and sort of research that day, split off for half an hour, 45 minutes, with like music in the background, and then come back together and sort of share insights and perspectives on what we learned. So that would be also just going through documentation like the Regen registry Notion, registry guide, etc., built on Regen, looking at trying to find different methodologies, etc. So that was really the process, and I think it was very very productive. Really sort of catalyzed the different folks who held that intention to start a methodology, um, and now we're submitting concept notes and getting things moving, taking the first steps, and